Hello and what's up to you all, matriculants? Welcome to it. This is your favorite show where you learn more and learn extra with us. And today we're giving you that final push because we don't want you to stress and to be nervous. My name is Abram and I'm with Peter today. How are you, Peter?
Good evening, everyone. Welcome. It's quite strange being in your living room on a Sunday afternoon. Folks, today's show is all going to be about getting you for that final little bit of prep that you need for tomorrow. So this show, folk, is your show. And so what we're going to ask is this, that if you have come across a question and you're not 100% sure how to do it, or you want clarification on how to do it, why don't you send Ibrahim a little message? He'll tell you now how to do it, okay? But please don't say to us, teach me the section on finance. Oh, that took us a quarter of the year. We only got an hour here. We can't do that. So if possible, give specific questions, folk, so that we can have a look at that. So if you send them through to him, I'll chat to Ibrahim during our first break, and then we'll take it from there. All right.
It's simple, Peter. All you need to do is to like our Facebook page, Mindsetter, facebook.com/LearnExtra, or follow us on Twitter @LearnExtra. Make sure that you send those questions. And on our Facebook page, because we love you guys, we post the notes for you guys. But in case you don't see them, go to learn.mindset.co.za. You'll see the notes. Let's not waste some time, Peter.
Yeah, let's get on with it straight away. On looking at our Facebook page earlier, some people asked questions. Can you do a question to do with space and measurement, like volume and areas and things like that? So that's exactly what I'm going to do. In fact, I'm going to start off looking at a question I gave my matrics in their prelim paper or during one of their tests. Let's have a look at it behind me. In order to save money, many people collect rainwater from the roof of their homes for either flushing toilets or for watering their garden. The owners of the house below have decided to catch all the runoff from the one side of their roof as illustrated below. Right, folks. In the early 1980s, I grew up in Natal, good old KwaZulu-Natal, and we had such a major drought that we were only allowed to a certain amount of liters of water a day. And at that stage, we had 3 young men growing up in our home, okay? Myself, my brother, and my cousin, who became like my brother. So you can imagine 3 boys growing up in a home and everybody wanting to take a bath, plus my mom and dad, all wanting to take a bath at some stage every day if possible, and that's normally a good thing to do, okay? Plus, we had toilets to flush, we had a garden and everything, and so my dad came up with this idea of running a pipe from the gutter system and putting it into a barrel. And that's where I got the idea for this question from. Okay, so what's going to happen is all the rain, the little bit of rain that did fall, that fell on the ceiling, would get caught in the gutter, and instead of being washed down the drain and washed away, it would be taken and be washed into a drum. And then we'd take this drum and we'd use it to fill up the toilets or to water a few plants out in the garden. Okay, so let's have a look here. Here I have my roof over here, and what we're going to do is we're going to catch all the water from this roof. You can see the gutter over here, and then instead of just going down into the drain, it's going to get caught into a water drum. And our water drum, we told, is 1 meter by 900 millimeters wide. Now, first question says this. What is the surface area of the one side of the roof? Give your answer to the nearest centimeter squared. Folk, tomorrow when you get a question like this, look and see if they're asking you to give the answer in a specific unit. If they are, change all your units to that unit the examiner is looking for. So in the question behind me, it's quite clearly stated, give your answer to the nearest centimeter squared. So I'm going to take the length of my roof, make shorts in centimeters, the width or the height of my roof, I'm going to call it the width, convert that to centimeters before I work out area. The next thing you'll see is they actually give you the formula and they say, hey, remember the area of a rectangle is length times breadth. Okay, so let's do this. So I have a length of 7,822 meters. I have a width of 5 1.48 meters. Right. Now, typical paper 2 type question, where they give you all kinds of units, but they want the answer in a different one. Your paper 1, you would have noticed they tended to give you your units in the unit they required the answer in. Paper 2, that's where the difference comes in. So looking at that, we need to determine now how many centimeters are there in a meter. And guys, you should by now know this, right? Let's write it up here. I'm going all the way down here. We know we got millimeters, you got centimeters, you got meters, and you got kilometers. The jump, 10, the next jump, 100, my next jump, 1,000. Okay? So if you need to convert millimeters to, let's say, kilometers, guys, I don't have to remember in my head straight away, oh yeah, that's 1,000,000. Not at all. I know 10 and then 100 and then 1,000. So it's going to be 6 zeros, which is 1,000,000. But if I can just remember that one diagram that's behind me, in fact, it should come on your screen now. If you remember this diagram over here, you can't go wrong. You can convert anything. Okay, so now, how many centimeters in a meter? We know we're dealing in 100. So what am I going to do? I'm going to multiply this answer by 100 and multiply, not answer rather, the length by 100 and the width by 100, and that should give me an answer in centimeters. Now, folk, I hope when you wrote your paper on Friday, and incidentally, I had a look at that paper, and whoa, it was a lovely paper, hey? It was really, really some good stuff there, good questions. But there were a lot of things in that paper that if you made silly mistakes, you'd lose marks, right? And remember what I said to you, in order not to make silly mistakes, use your calculator. Now, I know if I take 7,822 meters and multiply it by 100, I'm going to get 782,2 meters, okay? But let's check and make sure our calculator knows how to do that. So we're going to say 7.822, divide that by 100, or rather, oops, that's my mistake, multiply that by 100, and we land up, there it is, and we knew that was going to be the case, 782,2 centimeters. And likewise here, I'm going to land up with 548 centimeters. So my area is length, which is 782,2 centimeters, multiplied now by 548 centimeters. We multiply those two together, and again, I'm not going to do it because my head is a bit small, or rather not my head small, but the brain inside the head is small. Okay, there's a lot of gap there, but nevertheless. Okay, let's move on. 782.2 multiplied by 548, and ladies and gentlemen, here's my answer of 428,645,2. Are you going to remember that, Brian? Because I'm not. As soon as I touch the screen, the calculator disappears. It's out of my head.
Give it to me again.
Okay, so it's 428,645,6. Okay, so 428,000, how much? Wait, not much help here. 645.
65.
Just 6, eh? Centimeters squared. Okay, now remember, it's area, it has to be squared. If it was perimeter, it would just be the units, area squared, volume cubed. Right, now remember what I said on Thursday night? 3 questions I ask myself. Have I answered the question, number 1? Number 2, have I rounded correctly? And number 3, does my answer make any sense? Okay, now if you think that a centimeter, folk, is a little block, tiny little block, 1 centimeter down, 1 centimeter across, 1 centimeter up, 1 centimeter across, tiny little block, that is 1 centimeter squared. Do you think you can fit 428,000 on a roof? I think so. Okay? Now, have I rounded correctly? What does my answer say? To the nearest centimeter squared. And I haven't got it to the nearest, I've got a comma there. So we've got to get rid of that comma. So I'm going to say, right, it's 428,640 what? 45 or 46? Well, this 6 tells me that number's got to go, or that digit's got to go up. So it's going to be 428,646 what? Centimeters squared. Okay, now we found the area of the one side of our roof. My next question goes on to this. It now says, in one particular storm, there was a recording of 13 millimeters of rain. How much water in millimeters was collected in the water drum? Remember, length times breadth times height. Now, here's a bit of a trick to this question, because we're saying how much water went into the drum. And then the examiner for this particular question, who was me incidentally, I kid you not, gives you the formula for a rectangular prism and not a drum. So has the teacher lost it, or was there a reason he put this formula for a rectangle instead of the drum? Well, guys, obviously, the amount of water that's on the roof is going to go into the drum, is it not? So whether I calculate the volume on the roof or the volume in the drum, it really doesn't matter. But I know that the roof is covered with 13 millimeters of water. Now, obviously not all at the same time, because as water starts to fall on the roof, so it begins to run into the drum. But it's been recorded that were I not to, let's say I had a rectangle, okay, and it was flat, and water couldn't get away, it would have filled up 13 millimeters. So if I had a pan, square pan, okay, and poured water into that, and it would have filled up to 13 millimeters. How much volume is there? So let's do it. Now, it does say it wants its answer in millimeters cubed. So let's convert everything to millimeters cubed. Folk, here we go. The volume, or the length of my roof, is 7,822 meters. So let's put that on our calculator, and we'll bring our calculator this side. And I'm going to say we've got 7.822. Now that's in meters. To convert meters to centimeters, what do? We multiply by 100. And then to convert centimeters into millimeters, we times by another 10. Okay. Equals, so how many millimeters do I have? I have 7,822 millimeters. So 7,822 millimeters. What's the breadth of my roof? The breadth of my roof is 5,48 meters. So again, we're going to say, right, I have 5.48 meters. I'm going to multiply that by 10 to get it to centimeters, and then multiply by another 100 to get it to millimeters. Okay, and we land up with 5,480. 5,480 millimeters. Now, what was the height of the rain? Folk, here it is here, 13 millimeters. So I'm multiplying that now by 13 millimeters. Okay, equals. Now, out comes my calculator. My calculator is going to do all the work for me. We've got 7,822 multiplied by 5,480 multiplied by 13 equals, my giddy on. Folk, that's a huge number there. But we don't need to panic, okay? As it comes up on our calculator, so we just write it down on our answer sheet. So there it is. I wonder if my partner in crime here is going to help me.
I'll help you.
Will you? 557 239 280. Got it? Right,
Yes.
let's go. Call it out.
5572
Yeah.
39280.
39280. And folk, it's going to be in millimeters cubed. Why cubed? Because we're dealing in volume. Okay. Now again, guys, there's nothing hard about this. They've given you the formula. The only difference with this horrible paper too is you've had to do a whole lot of conversions before you actually even did the question at hand. All right. So next one. 1.2, let's go to our next question. Here we go. Now it says this: how full to the nearest percentage will the water in the drum be? Okay, so now what we're saying is, right, we want to know. We know we're taking all this water. Have you still got that digit there for me? Or did you delete it off your
I
computer?
think I know it.
You think you know it?
Yes.
You've got it?
Yeah.
All right, the man's got it. Remember, in this drum, we know that we've got an amount of, go for it,
5, 5,
5, 5,
7.
7.
I think.
Oh, you don't know, eh?
Yeah.
Oh, my giddy aunt. Okay, let's go again. Will you remember that one quickly? While you're doing that, I'll talk to the viewers. So what we're going to do is we've worked out that the drum is full with water to an amount of this huge number behind me, 557,239,280 millimeters cubed. But to be able to work out what percentage of the drum that is, we're going to have to work out the volume or the capacity of the drum if it's full. And then what we're going to do is we're going to take the amount of water in the drum and work out what percentage is that of the main drum. Okay? So let's do that quickly. And I know we've got to have an ad break, but I just really, really want to finish this question. Right, what was that number? Let's go.
55723
723
9280.
9280. Cool. That's how much water is in the drum. But folk, how much water can that drum hold? Well, let's have a look. First of all, we're going to use par, which is 3,14 or 3,142. Okay? Depends what the exam actually says to you must use. Sometimes they say 3,14, other times they say 3,142. Okay. Now, multiply that by the radius. What is the radius of this drum? Well, we know that the drum is 900 millimeters wide. So if the drum is 900 millimeters wide, okay, we know the radius must be half of that whole width. Now, what's half of 900? It's going to be 450. Agreed? If you don't believe me, check on your calculator. Okay, so it's going to be 450, and we're going to square that. Multiply by the height. Now, the height, we get told, is 1 meter. But, folk, we're working in millimeters. So I'm going to change that meter to millimeters. Okay, so I know there are 10 millimeters in a centimeter and 100 centimeters in a meter. So I'm dealing with 1,000. Now we're going to take that, and on our calculator, we're going to push all the buttons. So I'm going to say I've got 3.142 multiply by 450 squared, multiply that by another 1,000, and we get an answer of 636,255. Oh my goodness, my memory is really bad. 636,255,000 millimeters squared. Now we want to know how many of that can fit into the whole drum. And so we've run out of time, but you're going to take the one, divide it by the other, and then multiply it by 100. In fact, let's just do it. Why not? We've got time. Let's go. Okay, so we know I've got that much water in my drum. I got 557. Oops, so that's a 7, believe it or not. 239. And then 280. We're going to divide that by the 636,255,000 and multiply it by 100. Again, our calculator is going to do it. We're not going to do it. Okay, so out comes my calculator, and I'm going to move my calculator this side. Oops, calculator's disappearing. Here it is here. So we've got 557,239,280 all over what? 636,255,000, and then multiply it by 100, and we get an answer of 87,58. What does it ask us? To the nearest percent. If it's to the nearest percent, folk, it's going to be 88%. So our drum, after that thunderstorm, is 88% full. Sure, what tiring. Lots of you asking about tax. After break, we're going to do a tax question.
Thank you so much, Peter. Get yourself a glass of water because after the break, it's going to be hitting up with more of tax. See you guys. Welcome back, Matrix. Now, we're not only driving you to get your National Senior Certificate qualification, but we also want you guys to be drivers, have your own car. So we've got this awesome competition. It's called Be a Bright Spark. So if you think you are a Bright Spark, all you need to do is to buy yourself this official Safeways K53 Learners and Drivers Manual, or download the cool Android app, which is available from Google Play. Second thing you need to do is to like our Facebook page, facebook.com/LearnExtra, and like the Safeways Facebook page, facebook.com/Safeways K53. And the last thing you need to do is fill in an entry form on our Facebook page, which is called Win a Chevy Spark L. You could be driving that car. It's one of 4 cars. It could be yours. Peter?
Let me have a look at that quickly. All right, so this is quite a good competition, guys. And I like this because it shows you how you should drive and everything.
Yes.
Okay, this morning my wife drove me to the shop and... my dear, I'm going to buy you one of these books. All right. It's just, I think for safety's sake, we should do this. All right. Okay, let's get on with the program, shall we? I don't think I'm going home tonight. All right. So,
can I give you this question before you
yes,
move
give me
on?
a question.
All right. There's a question from Twelakele. Actually, it's from Ambasha. I wish... on which section do these measurements fall under? That's from Ambassa.
Okay, well, first of all, it falls under a section known as measurement. Okay, but don't get yourself too caught up on all these. You've got to answer the whole paper anyway, so just go for it, okay? It's got tough news. You can't choose your questions here. You've got to answer it all. So whether it falls under the section of measurement or maps, it doesn't matter, do it. But for interest's sake, the last question we did does fall under this whole section of measurement. Okay, so our main questions that are flowing in here is people are saying, Peter, you got to do a tax question. So that's exactly what we're going to do. And hopefully it won't take us longer than 15 minutes or so. So let's try and kill this question. Right, so use the table below to answer the questions that follow. Now, folks, before we even answer a tax question, we need to just decipher 3 different types of income. Because unless you know what those incomes are, you're going to get mixed up. The first type of income is your gross salary. That's the salary that your boss says you're going to earn. Or that's the salary that the company pays over to for your employment. So when I sit in a job interview, I sit there and my boss says to me, Peter, you are such a worthy employee, we're going to give you 2,000 Rand a month, okay? And I was like, wow, thanks, I'm blushing now, how wonderful, great, okay? Then what happens is, the company or the school I work for now begin to take off certain deductions, like they take off certain medical aid and they take off certain pensions. And then I'm left with a sum of money that we call a taxable salary. In other words, the amount of money that the tax man is going to base my tax payment on. Right? And after that taxes come off, I then get an amount in my bank account, which might be 900 Rand a month, and that now is my actual net salary. So gross, taxable, net. The one we're interested in for these questions are our taxable salary. What is the tax man, or what's the receiver of revenue going to pay or calculate my tax on what figure? Let's have a look. Okay, so use the table below to answer the questions that follow. Taxable income. Now, please take note, folk. This taxable income is your annual taxable income. It's not the amount you're earning in a month, but rather the amount you're earning in a whole year. That's important to remember. And then we get certain rates of tax, okay? So depending on how much I earn a year will depend on how much tax I'm actually going to be charged. Right. Now, let's have a look at the next thing, and that's a rebate. Now, rebates are fixed amounts deductible from tax payable according to the tax tables and are only applicable to individuals. In other words, it's not applicable to certain businesses. But guys, we are just dealing with tax with individuals, okay? So rebates are going to affect our calculations. This means that only once the tax has been calculated, an amount of either 8,280 Rand or 13,320 needs to be deducted. Okay, now I've got to stop you here and I've got to say to you, take note of the following. In this case, in this example behind me, they're saying you either paying that amount of tax or you paying that amount of tax. Sometimes the tax tables are worded in such a way where they'll say your primary tax, in other words, everybody is going to pay that, get that rebate. Okay, so your primary rebate, everyone gets that amount. Then it goes on to say secondary rebate, an additional amount of. So then you're going to deduct the primary rebate as well as the secondary rebate. And that normally kicks in only if you're about 63 or so. Okay? And then sometimes they'll say there's even a tertiary rebate. In other words, when you hit the ripe old age of 70 or 75, you're going to get more tax deducted, your tax amount you pay is going to be reduced by even more. But guys, so watch out for the words. But in the example behind me, they say you're either paying this or that. Examiners actually made it quite easy. Okay, so now let's have a look. Determine the monthly tax that needs to be paid every month if a person age 66 earns a taxable salary of 39,767 Rand and 95 cents a month. Now, do you remember I said to you that my tax table is based on annual salaries, not on monthly salary? And the example given me is 39,767 Rand and 95 cents a month. So what do I have to do? I have to take that monthly salary and multiply it by 12. Yes, folk, 12. Because there are 12 months in a year. Now, you may be sitting there in your lounge laughing and saying, oh, of course we know that. You'll be surprised how many matrics make the silly error of saying times 10. Okay, so I multiplied by 12, and I did this during the ad break, and I come up with this answer, 477,215, and you'll notice my calculator says 0.4. So I write down my answer, 477,215,4. But folks, that is incorrect. And why is it incorrect? It's incorrect because we're dealing with rands and cents. And cents, we've got to have two decimal places whenever we deal with money. So comma 4 means what? It means comma 4, 0. In other words, got 40 cents. I'm earning 477,215 Rand and 40 cents a month. Now I take this figure and I try and figure out where does that figure, 477,000, fit into my table. Now, guys, if I look at this, I can see 477,000 fits in right there on the last bracket of my tax table. And my tax table is saying, hey, before you even start, because you earn so much money, you got to pay the tax man 131,125 Rand. So it's 131,125 Rand. So that's what I'm doing. 131,125 Rand. Plus, I've got to pay something else. What else am I going to pay, folk? I'm going to pay another 40% of the amount above 450,000 Rand. So, how much more am I earning than 450,000 Rand? Let's have a look here. I've got 477,215 Rand minus, how much did we say? 450,000. Okay, sorry, oops, I forgot the point 40 cents, so let's just put that in quickly. Cool. Comma 4. And we're minusing 450,000 Rand. Okay, right. And I'm taking that amount, whatever that answer is going to be, and I'm going to multiply it by 40%. So whatever this extra little amount is, we're going to multiply that little bit by 40%. So what have I got? I've got 131,125 rand plus, now my calculator is going to do this for me. I'm going to say, there it is, 477,215 rand and 40 cents. We're going to subtract 450,000. And I get an answer of 27,215 rand and 40 cents. What am I going to do with that amount, folk? I'm going to multiply it by the 40%. So let's say times 40, and we can either do 40 over 100 or push the 40% sign. Equals, and it comes to 10,886 rand. 10,800 and, what was it? 86 rand and 16 cents, I think. Yep, 16 cents. So now we've got to add all those up together. So I've got that amount. Let's go this side. Plus, I'm going to add this 125 rand equals, and there's my answer, folk, 142,011 rand. So 142,011 rand and 16 cents. That's how much money now I owe to my taxman. However, the taxman says, hold on, because I'm a nice guy, I'm going to give you something called a rebate. Everyone gets a little bit of money back from the taxman. How much am I getting back? Well, I'm either going to get an amount of 8,280 or I'm getting 13,320. Well, how do I know if I'm getting the 8,000 or the 13,000 back? Well, folk, if you look carefully, it depends on my age. Look here. If I'm under 65, I'm getting that amount, 8,000 back. If I'm 65 or older, I'm getting more back. How old is this gentleman who's being taxed? He is, where's the question? It's down here somewhere. He is 66 years old. So if he's 66 years old, he's then getting the 13,320. So minus 13,320 rand. Okay, so out comes that calculator. We got that figure already. Minus 13,000, and how much was it? 320 rand. And there's my answer, 128,000. Let's write that. 128,691 and 16 cents. So that's how much tax I am paying back or giving to the tax man every year. Folk, do you remember my 3 questions? Question number 1, have I answered the question? I always ask myself that, okay? What was the question? The question was, determine the monthly tax. Way, I haven't answered the question. Do you see why we've got to ask ourselves those 3 questions? Have I answered the question? Have I rounded correctly? Does my answer make sense? Now, I haven't answered the question. I calculated the amount of tax that we earn in a year. I want to know, well, how much is that in a month? So we're going to divide my answer by 12. Divide it by 12 and we get an answer of 10,724 rand. 10,724 rand. And let's round it correctly, 26 cents. 26 cents. So that's the amount of tax I need to pay a month. Now guys, this tax question I've done behind me, it's a tough question. I've asked absolutely everything I possibly could ask you with that tax. And I know that the examiner has every right to ask you that tomorrow. But maybe he'll be kind and ask you bits of that. But you should know how to do that. If you can do that question, tell you what, you can do any question on tax tomorrow. So for all of those, and there were a number of you who said, please, tax, do a question on tax. I hope that's answered your question quite nicely. And who knows, if there are moms and dads watching this program, maybe now you'll be able to calculate your tax that you owe the tax man. And I think that deadline's coming up soon in November. Shit, I better get mine done as well. All right. Are there any other questions?
There's a question on tax from Katleo. Are we going to calculate the rebate if we're not given the age of the person?
No, listen, folk. The examiner's got to tell you the age of the person. All right. If he doesn't tell you the age of that person, you don't know what rebate the person is entitled to. Okay? What they might do, I just presume, I have no idea. And again, folk, I have never seen your exam paper in my life before. But what might happen is if they don't tell you anything about rebates and they just say, well, calculate the basic tax before any rebates are sorted, then they wouldn't have to give you an age. But if they're asking you for a full question and there's a thing on tax rebate, the examiner has to tell you how old that person is. Otherwise, you can't answer it. Okay?
Okay.
Anything else?
And not on tax?
Not on tax.
Yes.
Okay, we'll talk a break and find out what other questions. We got about 3 minutes before our next ad break, so let's have a look at another question. I love this question because it's to do with a whole whack of tables that we're going to be looking at. And folk, paper 2 is all about looking at different bits of information and coming up with a final result. And we might not be able to finish this question in this bit, but we'll finish it after the break if we don't. So let's have a look here. So unfortunately, David failed his first year university, and as a result, his parents sent him out to work. David manages to get a job as a sales representative. He needs his own car to do his job. If only he knew about our competition, he could have applied or entered and he could have won a nice little car, but he didn't, so let's find out his fate. Okay. He needs his own car to do this job. Fortunately, his parents bought him a second-hand car which has an engine capacity of 2,995 cc and is valued at 53,000 Rand. The company for which he works agrees to pay his traveling expenses using the table in Annexure A. Okay, so what happens is David needs a car, he goes out, he buys a car, and we would call it a 3-liter engine, okay? He gets a car with a 3-liter engine, but in reality it's not quite 3-liter, it's 2,995 cc. Okay, so now it says, using the fact that David travels an average distance of 3,000 kilometers every month, determine the fixed costs in cents that David would charge the company for every kilometer he traveled. Now, we're going to come across this huge table. Let's have a look at it. Okay, we're trying to calculate fixed costs. Now, this is such a big table, it doesn't fit all on your TV screen. So I'm going to work with a little bit at the top, and then we'll scroll down. So firstly, we need to know what is the purchase price of David's car. Now, do you remember the purchase price of his car? It was, here it is, 53,000 Rand. Because it's 53,000 Rand, we know we're dealing in this category over here. Okay, so the answer we're looking for is somewhere here. That's how much he's going to pay, or the fixed costs of his car. Now take note, it does say the average fixed cost in cents per kilometer. All right, so now the annual distance traveled. How far does David travel? Do you remember the question? It said here, he travels on average 3,000 kilometers, but folk, every month. Now watch out for these horrible little questions or horrible little sly things that the examiner is going to do to you in paper 2 tomorrow. It says here per month, but our table we're talking annual. So how do I change per month to annual? Multiplied by 12. So if he's traveling 3,000 kilometers a month, how much is he expected to do in a year? We're going to say 3,000 times 12, which is 36,000. So where does that fit on our table? 36,000 fits over here. So folk, this is how much David is actually going to get for every kilometer he travels. So the answer here is 63 cents per kilometer. Sure, lots of information to look at. I'm exhausted. I need a break. We need an ad break.
We need a break.
case
Well,
we-
I think you also need the break, mindsetters. We'll see you after the break. Welcome back, awesome matriculants. Remember, this show is proudly sponsored by MTN SA Foundation and endorsed by the Department of Education of South Africa, Basic Education, and we're so grateful for all the support and the help that we are getting to help you guys. We have a question from the Mindsetters, Peter.
Well, first of all, I want to say thanks to the Education Department for endorsing our program. I think it carries a lot of weight for us, and I personally am absolutely thrilled that they're standing behind us with mathematical literacy. So thanks to the Minister of Education and our Deputy Minister of Education, much appreciated.
Thank you so much, sir.
All right, so just before the ad break, we looked at finding the cost, okay? The cost value of a vehicle. I know we have a question. We're going to do it after I finish this.
No
All right.
problem.
So the cost value of that vehicle, we know we worked out by looking at a table. And remember, this question's all about looking at tables and finding information. Now it says find the running cost. Now, what is the running cost? Well, let's have a look here. Fixed costs, now running costs. Let's look at that. For our running costs, we're told we've got to take A plus B plus C. Here's A, it's to do with our petrol factor. B is to do with our service and tires. And C, our tire costs. Now, folks, I can't go into explaining all this because of time. But basically, all I'm wanting you to know is be able to read information off a table. First thing I've got to know for this is how big is our car. Okay, what's its engine capacity? And if you remember correctly, we were told the engine capacity is 2,995. So 2,995. Here we go. 2,909. Here it is here. So our answer is going to come from this question here, or from those figures there. So the first thing we're going to do is say this. We've got 10,96. Now let's have a look what we've got to do with that. The table tells us, hey, it says the petrol factor. And the petrol factor we're taking and we're multiplying by the cost of the petrol. And I'm just going to scroll down and see if we know what the cost of the petrol is. Did they give it to us? No, they didn't give it to us. Okay. Yes, they did. 14 Rand and 12 cents. Okay, so I've got that 14 Rand and 12 cents. So it's times 14 Rand and 12 cents. Plus, we're adding something else. What are we adding? We're adding 35,97 cents. Oopsie. Let's go. I'm trying to go so quickly. I'm making more mistakes than anything else. I think I should just slow down. 97 cents. Plus another 31,70 cents. Now I know what you're doing. You're looking at that saying, hey, hold on. How can you have comma something of a cent? Folk, if you want to be 100% accurate, you can. And where else do we see comma something of a cent? When we deal with exchange rates. So if they say the rand to the dollar, okay, is 10 Rand, comma, 74521 cents, guys, that's okay. All right? Cents doesn't always, we round it off to 2 decimal places because that's the currency we work in. But if you want 100% accuracy in calculating a final total, we can give currency to decimal places of a cent, okay? Your answer will never be like that, but the tables could give that to you, and that's what they've done. So on my calculator now, and again, I'm going to move it this side so we can all see what we're doing. We're going to say, right, I have 10.96 multiplied by 14.12 equals, and I get 154,7552 cents. To that, I'm going to add 35.97 cents. To that, I'm going to add 31.70 cents. And I get a final answer of 222. 222, comma, 4252. 4252 cents. Okay? What did my question actually ask me? It said, here we go, round it to the nearest cent. So let's round my answer to the nearest cent. What's it going to be? It's actually going to land up being, oops, I think I've gone to the wrong one. Here we go. Shop all the way down to the nearest cent is going to be 222 cents. Okay, guys, the only thing I wanted to get out from you there is for you to understand that we're looking at getting different figures from tables. Okay, and you've got to know how to work with different tables for paper 2, because they can give you any amount of information. Even in statistics, they will give you a whole lot of things that you need to draw from to get the correct bit of information. Okay, do you want to read that question to me? Can you remember?
Yes, Peter.
Yeah.
It's from Sakile. What if I convert after doing the workings?
Okay, so like this. Let's say we've got a block 2 centimeters by 5 centimeters, okay? And the examiner says, give your answer in millimeters squared, right? So you decide, oops, don't know what I wrote there. You decide, okay, I'm not going to convert the centimeters yet. I'm not going to convert the 2 centimeters or the 5 centimeters. I'm going to calculate my answer in centimeters squared and then convert to millimeters squared. Now, in fact, it's a dangerous thing to do, but you're allowed to do that. So let's say I say 2 times 5 and I get 10 centimeters squared. Now you're saying, hey, the answer's not in millimeters squared. It should be in centimeters squared. So I'm going to convert centimeters to millimeters. Now, how many millimeters in a centimeter, folk? They're 10, aren't they? So what a lot of students do is they say, right, I know they're 10 millimeters in a centimeter. I'm going to multiply that by 10, and I'm going to get an answer of 100 millimeters squared. And oh my Gideon, folk, that is so wrong. Why? Because we're dealing in area, and the unit for area is squared. So we've got a length and we've got a breadth. We're converting this, the 5 centimeters to millimeters and the 2 centimeters to millimeters. How many times are we converting centimeters and millimeters? Converting them twice. So our final answer, we got to convert our centimeter squared twice, because we had to convert once here and once here. So I would times by 10 and times by 10 again and land up then with 1,000 millimeters squared. And if I was doing volume, I would say times 10 times 10 times 10, because now we're dealing with 3 units. Do you understand that? Let's just show you again quickly. If I had 2 millimeters, I'd say that's 0.2 millimeters. 5 centimeters is 0.5 centimeters. My calculator will do this for me. 0.2 times 0.5 equals, sorry, I'm lying here like you can't believe. Let's try that again, right? I'm trying to go too quickly, so I'm making silly mistakes. That's 20 millimeters times 50 millimeters. And on my calculator, when I do that and say 20 times 50, I'm going to get an answer of 1,000. Okay? So understand that I converted this one and that one. There were 2 conversions in my operation. So if I don't convert first, I've got to make those 2 conversions in my answer. And guys, that does cause trouble. It causes huge trouble in matric. And so I always say, try and convert before you do the answer. Now, there's another question that people have asked me about, so I'm going to just try and get there quickly. I'm just skipping through some pages. Here we go. And that's this question on box and whisker plots, okay? So Megan went to 3 different car dealerships that sell pre-owned vehicles to find out how many vehicles they sell every month. She summarized the data for 1 year in the box and whisker plots below. Now, folk, looking at this, what I will say is that box and whisker is something new in the Maths Lit curriculum. Okay, so it hasn't come up before, so we're not too sure how the examiners are going to ask these type of questions. And so what we need to do is say this, well, we've got to understand it totally, right? We've got to know that this value here, if I draw this, I'm going to draw it in yellow. Here we go. Oh, and I'm trying to draw straight lines, but it's not coming out too straight here. But this value over here is my lowest value. This value over here is my highest value. The value inside the box, okay, is my median. This value over here is quartile 1, or my lower quartile. That value is quartile 3, or my upper quartile, okay? Like I said, the line in the middle is either my median, or we can also call it quartile 2. Oops, quartile 2. Right. Let's answer a few questions. We are down to about 3 minutes, so I'm going to try and do this quickly. Estimate the upper quartile value of the number of vehicle dealership M sold. Upper quartile is going to be this value over here. Sorry, that value over there. So what is that? That's round about here. I would say that's 40, 42, 44, 46, 48, about 49. Okay, so 49 vehicles. My next question. For how many months were the number of vehicles sold at dealership M more than 26? Now, how many months were they doing this for? They were doing it for every month, and they're looking for a year. So this box and whisker is actually representative of a year's data. Okay? So we want to know, here it is, for how many months were the number of vehicles sold at dealership M more than 26? Now, where is 26? It's over there. What's that mean, folk? Let me just draw this for you here quickly. If I give you this box, "25% of my data is over here. 25% of my data is there. 25% of my data is here, and 25% of my data is there." Now, I asked my students a question like this once. And I said, which has more data? This area, okay, or this area? Right. And so many students said, must be the yellow area. It's bigger. Not at all. Remember, it's broken up in percentages. Folk, I can't believe our time is up, and this is our last broadcast for the year. So it's been absolutely wonderful being with you. I wish you everything of the best for tomorrow. And remember those 3 questions. Have I answered the question? Have I rounded correctly? And does my answer make any sense? A special hazard to my son, who I know is so faithful to and watching me every week. So hazard boy, and this is it for the year from me. I can't believe it's come so quickly.
You've been great. You've been a great teacher. Absolutely deserves 100. That's
cool.
It from us. And thank you guys for tuning in. And a big thank you to MTN SA Foundation for proudly sponsoring us. And of course, the Department of Basic Education for endorsing this program. Up next, it is more revision exam questions for you, maths literacy guys. We love you and peace.